Something is coming, you can feel it. The world is shifting and deep down, everyone knows we're heading towards something big. But what if I told you the Bible describes a moment so strange, so powerful, that even heaven itself stops? No voices, no thunder, no music, just silence. A silence so intense that it lasts for about half an hour. Think about that. In a book filled with fire, trumpets, earthquakes, and angelic proclamations, there's this one mysterious pause. It's almost as if the entire universe holds its breath. Why? What could possibly be so massive that even heaven stops to take notice? Most people have never considered this. They skip past it, unaware that this silence is a warning. A final moment before everything changes. And if you've ever felt like we're living in uncertain times, like history is accelerating towards something, we might already be standing in that silent moment right now. So here's the question. What happens when this silence ends? And more importantly, are you ready for it? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see everything. The silence. No one can explain. The book of Revelation is filled with roaring sounds, thunderclaps, blaring trumpets, and angelic proclamations. Yet, in the midst of this apocalyptic storm, everything stops. Silence. A complete and absolute stillness in heaven, lasting for nearly half an hour. How do we explain this? Imagine a bustling city filled with honking cars, rushing crowds, and the ceaseless hum of machinery. Now imagine, in an instant, everything goes silent. No voices, no movement, nothing. That eerie, weighty silence, that is what Revelation 8:1 describes. But why? What could bring the entire heavens to a standstill? Is it the calm before an unimaginable storm, the final moment of grace before judgment, or something even deeper, something hidden in plain sight? This isn't the first time silence has carried such weight in Scripture. In the days of Noah, warnings were given, yet a moment came when the door of the ark was sealed. No more words, no more second chances. Before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, there was a quiet moment, one last opportunity for the righteous to escape before the fire fell. Even Jesus himself, when questioned by Pilate, chose silence over explanation. And now, in Revelation, the heavens fall silent once more. Could this be a final divine pause before the last great event in human history? If you've ever invested in a business, pursued financial freedom, or sought ways to build wealth, you may have noticed something strange. Right before a major breakthrough, there's often a lull, a moment when things seem motionless, like nothing is happening. But those who understand the process know it's just the stillness before a surge. The same principle applies here. This silence isn't meaningless. It's a sign, a moment before something world-shaking. But is it a moment of judgment, or one last chance for salvation? And more importantly, where do we stand in the timeline of this prophecy? Silence can be deafening. It can feel unsettling, even unbearable. But sometimes silence speaks louder than words. In 1 Kings 19, the prophet Elijah encountered a whirlwind, an earthquake, and a raging fire, yet God was not in any of them. Instead, he revealed himself in a gentle whisper. Could it be that this silence in heaven is not just a pause, but a declaration, a signal that the final verdict has already been passed? That time, as we know it, has run out. Today, people obsess over ways to make money online, build passive income, and secure their future. But few stop to consider the greatest investment of all, their soul. What is it worth? The Bible asks, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Mark 8:36. If this silence in heaven marks the closing of the last opportunity, then the real question is, when that moment comes, will you be ready? So I ask you, if the silence of heaven happened today, what would it mean for you? Is it a sign of peace or a terrifying warning? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, the hidden code in Revelation. Everything in Revelation is deliberate. Nothing happens by accident. The seals are broken one by one, each unleashing events of cosmic scale. But something strange happens before the seventh seal, a disruption in the pattern, a full stop, silence. What does it mean? If history follows a script, this is the moment when the narrator pauses, when the air gets thick with anticipation and everyone holds their breath. Why would heaven, a place of constant worship, go completely still? If you think this is just another passage in Scripture, think again. This silence holds a code, a sequence. And once you understand it, you start seeing the bigger picture. The book of Revelation is structured like a master plan, revealing itself layer by layer. The seventh seal isn't just another event, it's the closing of a cycle. Every previous seal brought chaos, war, famine, death. But this one? It doesn't start with noise, it starts with silence. That's your first clue. Because when something breaks a pattern, it demands attention. The sixth seal had already brought earthquakes, the darkening of the sun, the stars falling from the sky. If that's what came before, imagine what's coming next. The silence isn't peace. It's the gathering storm before the final trumpet sounds. You see, in business, in life, in investments, timing is everything. The right opportunity doesn't come with a blaring announcement. It comes in the quiet. The moment before a major market shift, before a financial breakthrough, before an economic collapse, there's a silence. The few who recognize it, they prepare. The rest, they're caught off guard. This silence in Revelation is the same. It's the moment where the wise take notice, the moment when those who are listening can make the right move before it's too late. But here's the real question. Are we in that moment right now? Think about the world today. Unrest, financial instability, a growing sense that something big is about to happen. When you put the puzzle pieces together, it starts making sense. The seals represent the unfolding of history, and the silence, that's the moment we're in. What's the next event in the sequence? Because if the pattern holds, this silence is about to be broken, and when it is, everything changes. Most people don't think about this. They're focused on surviving day to day, trying to figure out how to make more money, find stability, secure their future. But let me tell you something. Real security isn't found in a number in your bank account. It's found in knowing where you stand when the silence ends. Because when that seventh seal is fully opened, the next sound you hear won't be the whisper of opportunity. It'll be the roar of prophecy coming to pass. So let me ask you, if this silence is happening right now, what's your next move? Have you positioned yourself for what's coming? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand. The mystery of the pause. What's being prepared? Everything in life follows a rhythm, expansion, contraction, movement, pause. It's a universal law. And right in the heart of Revelation, we see it playing out. The seals have been opening, unleashing war, chaos, and upheaval. But suddenly, silence. Not for an hour, not for a day, for about half an hour. That's specific, that's deliberate. And when something deliberate happens in a divine sequence, it means something is being prepared. The question is, what? Look at history. Every major shift is preceded by a quiet moment. Before the flood, Noah and his family sat in the ark for 7 days. No rain, no sign of disaster, just waiting. Before Sodom was destroyed, there was a moment when Lot hesitated. Before the crucifixion, Jesus stood silent before Pilate. And now, before the final unfolding of Revelation, heaven itself holds its breath. This isn't an accident, it's a warning, a last moment of grace before the storm hits. But how long is that moment? And are we living in it right now? Pause and think about this. Whenever someone is about to make a life-changing decision, whether it's an investment, a career move, or a shift in personal growth, there's always a quiet before the action. It's in that silence where everything is decided. The winners and the losers, the ones who are prepared and the ones who are caught off guard. If you knew this moment in Revelation was playing out in real time, what would you do differently? Would you shift your focus? Would you prepare? Would you position yourself correctly? Because those who recognize the pause have an advantage, the opportunity to act before the rest of the world wakes up. But let's take it deeper. What if this silence isn't just about what's coming next? What if it's about something that's already been set in motion? When the pause ends, there's no going back. That's how it works in everything. A deal is made, and once the ink dries, the outcome is inevitable. A rocket is launched, and after a brief moment of weightlessness, gravity pulls it back to Earth. Once the silence in heaven is broken, the sequence continues. Unstoppable, irreversible. Could it be that, in this moment, destinies are already being sealed? The choices made now will determine the outcome when the final events unfold. Most people will ignore this. They'll go about their daily lives, worrying about money, career, relationships, wondering how to make an extra dollar online or find the right investment. But what's money worth when time runs out? If the silence is a sign, then what comes after it is more important than anything we can accumulate in this life. The real question is, will you be caught off guard, or will you be one of the few who understood what this moment really meant? So let me ask you, what do you think this silence represents? Is it a moment of mercy, or is it the final pause before history's greatest event? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand. The paradox of divine silence. Justice or warning? We're conditioned to think silence means absence. If someone stops speaking, we assume they're not listening. If we don't hear from a friend, we assume they've forgotten us. But silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, it often means the opposite. In a courtroom, when the judge falls silent, it's not because they're unsure, it's because the verdict has already been decided. And in Revelation, when heaven itself goes silent, it could mean one of two things. Judgment is set, or one last chance is being given. Which one is it? Look at Scripture. Every time God was about to act in a major way, there was a moment of silence before it. Before the flood, Noah spent years building the ark while the world went on as usual. Before Egypt was struck with plagues, Pharaoh had multiple chances to listen. And before the walls of Jericho fell, the Israelites marched in silence for 6 days. You see the pattern? Silence isn't the absence of action. It's the moment when everything is about to shift. But here's the real question. If that moment were happening now, would you even recognize it? Think about it. How many people dismiss signs until it's too late? Economic collapses don't happen overnight. There are always warning signs. Relationships don't fall apart suddenly. There are always unspoken signals. And when history changes forever, there's always a brief moment where those who are paying attention can see it coming. That's what this silence is. Not an ending, but a transition. A moment when the final decision is locked in, and those who are prepared will move with it, while the rest are left wondering what just happened. Now ask yourself, if God's silence in Revelation is actually the last pause before his final action, what does that mean for us? It means the window of opportunity is closing. It means decisions are being finalized. And once the silence is broken, there's no negotiating. The door of the ark is shut. The trumpet has sounded. The time to choose is over. People spend years trying to secure their financial future, seeking passive income, looking for ways to get ahead. But the ultimate question is, what happens when the only thing that matters isn't money, but where you stand when this moment comes? Most people will ignore this. They'll assume life will continue as it always has. But that's exactly how every major shift in history has played out. The world was eating and drinking, marrying and celebrating right up until the flood came. They mocked Noah until the rain started falling. They dismissed Lot's warning until the fire began to fall. And today, most people are too distracted to realize they might be standing in the middle of the greatest transition in human history. So let me ask you, when God goes silent, what do you think is about to happen? Do you see it as a final warning, or is it already too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know how you see this moment, the signs leading to this prophetic moment. Nothing happens in isolation. Every major event in history has a build-up, an accumulation of signs, patterns, and warnings that most people ignore until it's too late. Revelation lays out a clear sequence: earthquakes, wars, plagues, and celestial disturbances. Chaos builds. And then, the silence. A moment so profound that heaven itself stops. Think about that. Not just the world. Heaven, the place where angelic voices never cease, where worship is eternal, suddenly everything pauses. If that doesn't make you stop and think, nothing will. But let's be real. You don't need to open Revelation to see what's happening in the world today. Look around. Global instability, economic collapses, governments in turmoil. The things we once thought were unshakable are unraveling before our eyes, and yet most people are too busy chasing distractions to see the bigger picture. They're worried about how to make money online, build passive income, or climb the corporate ladder, without realizing that the very foundation of the system they're relying on is shifting beneath their feet. History moves in cycles, and those cycles always repeat. Before every great economic downturn, there were warning signs. Before every war, there were negotiations that failed. And before every act of divine judgment, there were clear signals, ignored by the masses, but recognized by a few. The question is, which group are you in? Because if the signs are already here and the silence is coming next, then what follows after that is unavoidable. This is where most people get uncomfortable, because deep down, they know something is off. They feel it. The tension, the uncertainty, the sense that we're on the brink of something, but they can't put their finger on what. That's how it always is. Just before a major shift, life appears to go on as usual, until suddenly, it doesn't. And when that moment comes, those who weren't paying attention will be caught completely off guard. So here's what you need to ask yourself. If the signs are already here, what does that mean for you? Are you preparing for the inevitable, or are you assuming that life will continue as it always has? The world is entering a turning point, whether people realize it or not. And when that silence finally arrives, it won't be just another quiet moment in history. It will be the last pause before everything changes. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe we're already seeing the signs, or do you think there's still time? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's really paying attention. The day. Even the angels stopped. Something terrifying was about to happen. There are moments so powerful, so overwhelming, that even the most unshakable forces stand still. That's what happens in Revelation 8:1. Heaven, a place where praise never ceases, where the presence of God fills every moment with glory, suddenly falls silent. Not a whisper, not a song, not a sound. Why? What could be so immense, so terrifying, that even the angels, beings who have witnessed creation, judgment, war, and resurrection, would stop everything? This is no ordinary pause. This is the stillness before something so monumental that even heaven itself braces for impact. You see, angels have seen it all. They were there when Lucifer fell. They watched as the Red Sea split. They stood guard when Christ lay in the tomb, and they rejoiced when he rose. But here, right here, something different is happening. Something so staggering that even they hesitate. This silence isn't hesitation. It's reverence. It's the realization that what's about to unfold will change everything. And if even the angels recognize the magnitude of this moment, shouldn't we? Think about the greatest shifts in human history. Before every war, there was a moment of stillness. Before a market crash, there was an eerie sense that something wasn't quite right. And before every major personal breakthrough, there was that moment of inner tension, the quiet just before the leap. That's what this silence is, a threshold, a point of no return. And if we're standing in that moment right now, the real question is, what comes next? Most people will brush this off. They'll tell themselves that life will continue as it always has, that economies will recover, that nations will stabilize, that the storm will pass. But those who understand cycles, patterns, and timing know better. Silence is never just silence. It's a precursor to something bigger. And the fact that it's happening in the book of Revelation should stop everyone in their tracks. Because when heaven itself pauses, it's not a question of if something is coming, it's a question of when. Now, let's bring it home. If the angels, who have seen everything, are standing in stunned silence, what does that say about what's coming? This isn't just another event. It's the event. The moment that history has been building toward since the beginning of time. And when that silence breaks, the world as we know it will never be the same again. So let me ask you, if this silence happened today, would you be ready for what comes after? Would you be caught off guard? Or would you be one of the few who saw it coming? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know how you see this unfolding. The hidden connection to the prophecies of Daniel and Isaiah, patterns, cycles, everything in Scripture is connected. Nothing stands alone. What happens in Revelation isn't just a random sequence of events. It's the fulfillment of prophecies that were set in motion thousands of years ago. And if you think this silence in heaven is an isolated mystery, think again. The clues were left in Daniel. The warnings were spoken in Isaiah. The code has been there all along. The question is, have you seen it? In Daniel 12:4, the prophet is told to seal up the words of his vision until the time of the end. That means some things were intentionally hidden, meant to be revealed only when the moment was right. And Isaiah 42:14, that's where God himself declares, I have kept silent for a long time. I have been quiet and held myself back. But now, like a woman in childbirth, I cry out. Do you see it? God's silence is never without purpose. It's never an absence. It's a build-up, a waiting, a final moment before everything shifts. And now, in Revelation, we see it happening on a cosmic scale. Step back and think, what happens when an archer pulls back a bow? There's tension, there's stillness, and then release. That's what's playing out in Scripture. That's what's happening in the world right now. A quiet before the force of something unstoppable. The silence of God before his voice shakes the heavens. The last pause before the storm. But here's the real question. Do you know what's coming when the silence ends? Look at the world today. We are living in times of uncertainty, financial instability, political upheaval, a constant search for ways to gain security, people looking for passive income, financial freedom, ways to control their future. But what if the greatest event in history is already unfolding, and most people are too distracted to see it? The silence in Revelation isn't about fear, it's about awareness. It's about knowing where you stand when the quiet is finally broken. Most will ignore this. They'll keep moving through life as if nothing is happening. But a few, the ones who study, who seek, who listen, will recognize the pattern. They'll understand that when God is silent, it's not because nothing is happening. It's because something unstoppable is about to be unleashed. And when that moment arrives, those who are paying attention won't be caught off guard. So let me ask you, do you see the connection? Do you believe these prophecies are pointing to something unfolding now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. When the last sound is heard, what happens next? Everything has a final moment, a last breath, a last heartbeat, a last opportunity. The book of Revelation tells us that after the silence, the seventh trumpet will sound, and when it does, everything changes. No more warnings, no more delays, no more second chances. This is the tipping point, the moment when everything that has been set in motion finally reaches its peak. If you've ever wondered how the story ends, this is it. But here's what most people miss. The silence doesn't come after the trumpet. It comes before. That means whatever is about to happen is so significant, so irreversible, that the heavens themselves pause. The entire order of creation stands still, waiting. This isn't just another moment in history. This is the moment, the final transition. And if that's the case, The question we should all be asking is, how close are we? Think about it. In life, there are always signals before the breakthrough. Before financial success, there's a season of discipline. Before a major shift, there's often uncertainty. And before the biggest opportunities, there's usually hesitation. The quiet before the leap. This pattern plays out everywhere, and here, in the grandest narrative of all time, we see it happening again. Silence, then the final trumpet. A pause, then the irreversible event. If you knew you were standing in that quiet moment right now, what would you do differently? Most people don't want to think about this. They'd rather focus on the immediate, on their jobs, their income, their future plans. And that's understandable. But let me tell you something. The world is shifting. The economy is unstable. The systems people rely on are fragile. And whether they realize it or not, they are standing at the edge of something bigger than they can see. The real question is, are they ready? Are you ready? Because when that trumpet sounds, there is no rewinding the clock. This is not about fear. It's about awareness, about being conscious of the moment you're in, about making decisions, not just for your financial future, not just for your career, but for something bigger. Because when this silence ends and the last sound is heard, what happens next is set in stone, and those who saw it coming will not be surprised. So I ask you, what do you think happens the moment this silence ends? Do you see it as a final warning, or is it already too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's really paying attention. The day God closes the heavens, will any prayer be heard? There comes a point when the door shuts, when the window of opportunity closes, when the last prayer is prayed but there's no answer. That moment has happened before, and according to Revelation, it will happen again. The silence in heaven isn't just a pause. It could be the final moment before the world realizes that grace has run out. Think about that. A time when no more prayers will be answered, no more second chances, no more pleading for mercy. The decision has already been made. And if that moment were coming soon, how would you live differently? Look at history. When Noah built the ark, he warned people for years. They laughed, they mocked, they ignored him. Then one day, something changed. The door shut, the rain started, and in that moment all the people who had dismissed his warning realized the truth. But it was too late. When the door to the ark was sealed, it wasn't Noah who closed it. It was God. And when God closes a door, no one can open it. Now, fast forward to Revelation. A time is coming when the heavens will close and the prayers of the unprepared will go unheard. Do you see the connection? This is how it always happens. People wait until the last second. They tell themselves there's still time. They think they'll act when things get really bad. But by the time they realize what's happening, it's already over. This is true in every area of life. People wait until the economy crashes before they think about financial security. They wait until their health fails before they start taking care of themselves. They wait until relationships break before they try to fix them. And in the biggest moment of all, when eternity itself is at stake, the same pattern will play out. Now here's what most people miss. In Revelation, the silence happens right before the final outpouring of God's judgment. That means once the silence is over, the window of grace has already closed. What does that tell you? It tells you that by the time the world realizes what's happening, the decision has already been made. The time to act isn't when the silence ends, it's before it even begins. Most people will ignore this. They'll go on living as if nothing is happening. They'll focus on making money, building their careers, and securing their future, without realizing that the ultimate future is about to be decided. And when the moment finally comes and they cry out for another chance, the silence will be deafening, because by then the door will have closed, just like it did in Noah's time. So I ask you, if that door were closing today, would you be on the inside or the outside? Do you believe there's still time, or do you think the silence is already beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's truly paying attention. The surprising connection to the days of Noah. Patterns don't lie. If you want to understand the future, study the past. History repeats itself, and nowhere is that clearer than in the story of Noah. People lived their lives as if nothing would change. They ate, drank, married, built their businesses, made plans for the future, right up until the moment the flood came. And by then, it was too late. The door was shut. The decision was final. Now, here's what most people miss. Jesus himself said that the last days would be just like the days of Noah. That means the world won't see it coming. They'll be so focused on their daily routines, their financial goals, their ambitions, that they won't even notice the warning signs. Now, let's look at this silence in Revelation. Noah and his family entered the ark, and then nothing. 7 days of silence before the first raindrop fell. Imagine that. 7 days where the people outside could have woken up, could have realized something was wrong, but they didn't. They kept laughing, kept mocking, kept assuming that life would continue as usual. Then, in an instant, everything changed. This silence in heaven, could it be the same kind of moment? A final pause before judgment begins? A last chance for people to realize what's coming before it's too late? Think about how this applies to everyday life. The biggest shifts, the ones that change everything, don't come with a flashing sign. They come quietly. The stock market doesn't announce a crash before it happens. A business opportunity doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Relationships don't fall apart overnight. It happens slowly, in the moments you weren't paying attention. And the biggest change in human history, it's coming in the exact same way, in silence. In a moment when people least expect it, the ones who are aware will be prepared. The ones who aren't, they'll be caught off guard. That's why this matters. This isn't just another prophecy. It's a roadmap. It's a message that's been given before, long before Revelation was even written. The story of Noah wasn't just about a flood. It was about a moment of decision, a moment when some chose to listen and others ignored the signs, a moment when the door of opportunity closed and the world was never the same again. Most people will ignore this. They'll assume there's still time. They'll think life will continue as it always has. But history doesn't work that way. It moves in cycles. And when a pattern appears in Scripture over and over again, it's not just a story. It's a warning, a lesson, a message about what's coming next. And right now, all the signs are pointing to the same thing. We are standing in that silent moment, the pause before the flood, the waiting before the storm, the last chance before the door shuts. So I ask you, are you inside the ark, or are you still standing outside, waiting for proof? Do you believe we're in the days of Noah all over again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's really paying attention. The revelation few see, hidden in plain sight. Some truths aren't obvious at first glance. They require a deeper look, a shift in awareness, a willingness to see beyond the surface. That's exactly what's happening with this silence in heaven. Most people read past it, assuming it's just a dramatic pause before the next event. But if you understand how prophecy unfolds, you know better. You know that every detail in Scripture is intentional. Nothing is random. And this moment of silence isn't just a pause, it's a turning point. A final unseen shift before everything is set in motion. There's a hidden detail here that most overlook. This silence happens at the exact moment when the prayers of the saints rise before God like incense. Do you see it? For centuries, prayers have been lifted up. Pleas for justice, cries for deliverance, intercessions for the lost. And in this moment, something changes. The prayers are no longer just being received, they are being answered. That's why the silence matters. It marks the moment when mercy transitions into judgment, the moment when the world moves from waiting to reckoning. Think about how this applies to life. Every major breakthrough follows a period of waiting. Every financial success, every career shift, every major transformation is preceded by a season of silence. where nothing seems to be happening, but everything is being prepared. If you've ever invested, built a business, or worked toward a long-term goal, you know exactly what I mean. The time between planting and harvesting can feel quiet, uneventful, but beneath the surface, everything is shifting, and when the silence ends, the results become clear. This is what's happening in Revelation. The silence isn't emptiness, it's full of meaning. It's the moment when the final decisions have been made, the line has been drawn, the prayers have been answered, and now the response is about to be revealed. If you've been waiting, wondering when things will change, when justice will be served, when truth will be revealed, this is that moment. But once the silence is broken, there is no more time to prepare. The shift has already occurred. Most people miss this because they aren't looking for it. They assume they'll see the signs when the time comes. But by the time most people recognize what's happening, it's already too late to act. The ones who understand cycles, patterns, and timing, they prepare before the shift. They position themselves before the change. And when the silence ends, they are already where they need to be. So I ask you, have you positioned yourself for what comes after the silence? Have you seen the shift happening? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's truly aware of what's unfolding. Can science explain a cosmic silence like this? Everything in the universe follows a pattern. From the expansion of galaxies to the shifting of economies, from the rise and fall of nations to the growth of a single seed, nothing happens randomly. And when the book of Revelation describes a silence so profound that it halts the heavens, we have to ask ourselves, is there a deeper connection? Could this silence be more than just a spiritual event? Could it have a scientific counterpart? We already know that space isn't just vast. It's filled with sound, with energy, with movement. Stars explode, galaxies collide, black holes consume everything in their path. But here's what's fascinating. Scientists have recorded moments of absolute silence in deep space, periods where certain signals and cosmic frequencies suddenly vanish. They don't know why. They don't know what causes it, but they do know this. Silence in the cosmos usually means something is about to happen. A shift, a disruption, a massive cosmic event. Now, connect that with Revelation. If the physical universe mirrors spiritual realities, could this silence in heaven be linked to something we haven't yet discovered? Something in the very fabric of reality? There's a growing theory among astronomers that the universe itself operates on a rhythm: expansion, contraction, energy bursts, silence. What if this silence isn't just a pause, but a recalibration? A moment where something in the universe aligns before the next great shift. Think about how this applies in life. Every major transformation has a moment of stillness before the breakthrough. Before the economy shifts, there's a slowdown. Before a volcanic eruption, there's an eerie quiet. Before a hurricane makes landfall, there's a strange calm. This pattern is everywhere. It's universal. It's how change works, and if the universe itself is reflecting this same principle, then what we're seeing in Revelation isn't just symbolic, it's a reality waiting to unfold. Most people don't think about this. They assume spiritual truths and scientific discoveries are separate, but the more we learn, the more we realize they're connected. If Revelation describes a silence so intense that it precedes the greatest shift in human history, and if science is starting to detect unexplained silences in the cosmos, could we be on the verge of something much bigger than we ever imagined? Could this moment of stillness be an actual cosmic event, something already in motion? So let me ask you, do you think science will eventually confirm what Revelation already told us? Or are we witnessing something beyond human understanding? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's really thinking beyond the obvious, the final key to understanding. This mystery lies in these words. There's always a missing piece, a final clue that pulls everything together. And when it comes to this great silence in heaven, there's a verse tucked away in the Old Testament that few talk about. It's in the book of Zephaniah, one of the least studied prophets. Yet his words hold a key to understanding what Revelation is really telling us. Zephaniah 1:7 says, "Be silent before the sovereign Lord, for the day of the Lord is near." Do you see it? The silence in heaven isn't random. It's not just a dramatic pause, it's an announcement, a signal that the final stage has arrived. And what follows is what's been spoken of for centuries, the ultimate reckoning, the moment when every decision becomes final. Look at the pattern. Before any major shift, there's a quiet moment of alignment. Before a runner sprints, there's a breath of stillness. Before an investment skyrockets, there's a period where the market is flat. Before a major breakthrough in your life, there's usually a time when nothing seems to be moving, and then everything happens at once. This is how transitions work, both in the physical world and in the spiritual. The silence in heaven is that moment, the instant before history pivots on its axis. Now think about what this means for us today. The world is moving fast. Chaos, uncertainty, financial instability. People are looking for ways to build security, to gain control, to create wealth in an unpredictable future. But what if the real shift isn't in the markets? What if it's in the timeline of history itself? What if we're standing on the edge of that silence right now, the moment before everything changes? Most will miss this. They'll assume life will continue as usual. They'll focus on their next paycheck, their next investment, their next distraction, without realizing that the greatest shift of all time is about to unfold. And by the time they do realize it, the silence will be over. The transition will have already happened. And the ones who prepared, they won't be surprised. They'll be exactly where they need to be. So I ask you, do you see the pattern? Do you believe we're standing on the edge of this moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who's truly paying attention, the truth that was hidden, what this silence really means. Here it is, the final revelation, the answer that has been hidden in plain sight. This silence in heaven, it's not just a moment. It's not just a pause before the next event. It's the last moment before the ultimate shift, a moment where everything that has been set in motion finally locks into place, a moment where destinies are sealed and the final stage of history begins. Think about what that means. Once this silence ends, there's no turning back, no more rewrites, no more second chances. The time for decision-making is over. The moment has passed. And those who understood what was coming, they won't be caught off guard. They will have already positioned themselves, already made their choice, already stepped into alignment with the inevitable. Life works the same way. The biggest opportunities don't announce themselves. They don't wait for you to be ready. They appear, and then they're gone. People miss out on financial breakthroughs because they hesitated too long. They miss out on relationships because they waited for the right time. They miss out on their own potential because they ignored the signs, convinced they had more time. But the truth is, the window of opportunity is always closing. And in Revelation, that window shuts for good. Look at the world today. You don't need a prophecy to see that everything is shifting. Economies are unstable. Governments are crumbling. People are searching for security through money, through status, through distractions. But none of it will matter when this silence ends, because at that moment, the only thing that will count is where you stand when the final shift takes place. Most people will ignore this. They'll assume there's more time. They'll keep waiting for things to go back to normal. But those who recognize the pattern, those who understand how history moves, will see the truth. They will know that once this silence ends, nothing will ever be the same again. The question is, will they be ready? Will you? So tell me, do you think we are standing on the edge of this moment right now? Are you seeing what's coming? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's see who truly understands what's happening. We've reached the end of the journey. But this isn't just a story, it's a wake-up call. The silence in heaven is not a myth, it's not a symbol, it's real. And once it ends, everything shifts. The final decisions will have been made. The last prayers will have been spoken. The moment of hesitation will be over. The world is distracted. People are chasing money, careers, success, searching for ways to build security in an uncertain world. And yet, the greatest shift in history is unfolding right before their eyes, and they don't even see it. But now you do. You've seen the pattern, you understand the cycle, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The question is, what will you do with this awareness? This is how life works. The opportunities that matter don't wait. They don't announce themselves with flashing lights. They come quietly, in moments of decision, and those who recognize them act. The ones who hesitate, they get left behind, and that's exactly what's happening right now. The silence in heaven is coming to an end, and when it does, history will enter its final chapter. So ask yourself, where do you stand? Have you positioned yourself for what comes next? Or are you waiting for more proof, more time, more certainty? Because by the time most people realize what's happening, it will already be too late. If this message spoke to you, don't just move on. Take action. Leave a comment, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this isn't just another video. This is your wake-up call.